Halafra Bennett never envisioned her life transforming into a gilded cage, a prison of unimaginable wealth. As she gazed out through the towering floor-to-ceiling windows of the Manhattan penthouse, the city lights twinkled below, each a distant star representing a life forever beyond her reach. The sprawling living room behind her echoed with cold, modern elegance, all stark lines and emotionless, costly art. It held no warmth, no soul, no trace of the simple girl who had grown up kneading dough in her grandmother's cozy Burlington, Vermont bakery, the scent of yeast and cinnamon clinging to her clothes. 6 months prior, her father's business had crumbled beneath the weight of undisclosed debts. Their family bakery, a legacy spanning 3 generations, was mere hours away from foreclosure when Ryan Costanos, a titan of the tech world, appeared with an offer that seemed too fantastical to be real. He would salvage everything. Her father's legacy, their cherished home, her mother's mounting medical expenses, all in exchange for one thing: Halafra's hand in marriage. She had seen photographs of him, of course. Ryan Costanos was impossible to ignore. The 34-year-old tech genius who had revolutionized artificial intelligence, amassing a multi-billion-dollar empire before most had even launched their first startup. His dark hair, deliberately styled to fall just a touch too long, framed sharp cheekbones that could cut glass, and his eyes, the color of turbulent storm clouds, revealed absolutely nothing. He possessed a detached handsomeness that made him seem more like a sculpted marble statue than a living, breathing man. Their wedding was a quiet, almost clandestine affair held in a sterile courthouse, witnessed only by lawyers and sealed with signatures instead of passionate kisses. Ryan had shaken her hand afterward, his grip firm and professional, and informed her that his driver would escort her to the penthouse. He had pressing business in Tokyo and would see her in a week. That week morphed into weeks, then months. Ryan only returned to the penthouse to sleep, arriving long after midnight and departing before dawn painted the sky with its first light. Their interactions consisted of brief, impersonal nods in passing hallways and the occasional terse note left by his efficient assistant detailing social engagements she was expected to attend alone. She wore his ring, bore his name, and resided in his home, but she was less a wife and more a decorative, beautiful object, admired but ultimately ignored. Halafra turned away from the mesmerizing window and wandered through the silent apartment. Everything whispered of obscene wealth, from the polished Italian marble floors to the bespoke furniture that likely cost more than her entire childhood home. But it was sterile, impersonal, akin to living in an extravagant hotel where she was the sole, forgotten guest. The enormous kitchen, equipped with every conceivable culinary gadget, remained mostly untouched. Ryan never dined at home, and the idea of cooking for herself in such a vast space felt utterly absurd, almost comical. In the beginning, she had desperately tried to transform this cold space into a home. She bought vibrant bouquets of flowers for the tables, carefully arranged books on the shelves, and even attempted to prepare elaborate dinners for those rare evenings when Ryan vaguely mentioned he might be home. But the flowers wilted in their crystal vases, their vibrant colors fading as she ate alone, the only sound the clinking of her fork against the expensive china. The books gathered dust, their spines unread, and the carefully prepared meals were unceremoniously scraped into the trash as she waited for a husband who never appeared. The loneliness was a tangible weight, pressing against her chest, stealing her breath until some mornings she woke up gasping for air, struggling to escape its suffocating grip. She missed her parents desperately, but a fierce pride prevented her from confessing the grim truth of her marriage. They believed she had found true love with this remarkable man, that she was living a modern-day fairy tale. How could she shatter their illusions by revealing she was more alone now than she had ever been in her entire life? Her days fell into a monotonous rhythm. She woke alone, exercised in the building's state-of-the-art private gym, lost herself in books in the library, and occasionally ventured out for solitary walks through Central Park, seeking solace in nature's embrace. The penthouse staff treated her with polite indifference, never quite meeting her gaze, as if they were privy to the shameful secret of her situation. She was Mrs. Costanos in name only, and it seemed everyone was aware of it, except perhaps the glossy society pages that occasionally published photographs of her at charity events, speculating endlessly about the identity of the reclusive billionaire's mysterious wife. It was during one of these aimless walks through Central Park on a crisp October afternoon, as the leaves blazed with the vibrant hues of autumn, that everything began to subtly shift. Halafra had paused to watch a group of children playing joyfully near the Bethesda fountain, their innocent laughter a bittersweet reminder of the vibrant life she had once imagined for herself, when a warm, inviting voice interrupted her melancholic thoughts. "Those clouds look like they're about to open up. Do you mind if I share your bench before the rain starts?" She looked up to find a man in his early 30s, handsome in a warm, approachable way that stood in stark contrast to Ryan's cold perfection. He had sandy brown hair, kind eyes the color of golden amber, and a genuine smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. He wore an expensive suit, but had loosened his tie, giving him an air of approachability, making him seem more human than the rigid executives she occasionally encountered at Ryan's formal events. "Of course not," Halafra said, surprised by how raspy her voice sounded from disuse. He sat down, maintaining a respectful distance, and pulled out his phone just as the first fat drops of rain began to fall. "I'm Julian, by the way, Julian Westbrook." The name was instantly familiar. Julian Westbrook was the head of Westbrook Technologies, one of Ryan's primary competitors in the cutthroat world of artificial intelligence. She had seen his name in the business section of newspapers left scattered around the penthouse, usually in articles that framed him as Ryan's chief rival. If Ryan was portrayed as a man of ice, the article suggested Julian was fire, passionate about his work, outspoken about the ethical implications of AI, and actively involved in his company rather than distant and detached. "Halafra," she replied, consciously deciding not to reveal her married name. Something about this impromptu encounter felt disconnected from her life as Mrs. Costanos, a brief pocket of normalcy in her otherwise isolated existence. "That's a beautiful name. I've never heard it before. My grandmother was Greek. It means lightbringer." Julian smiled. "Does it suit you?" Halafra looked away, watching the rain begin to fall harder on the path before them, the droplets glistening on the wet pavement. "I'm not sure anything suits me anymore." The sadness in her voice must have been evident, because Julian's expression immediately shifted to concern. "Are you all right?" "Yes," she lied automatically, then surprised herself by adding, "No, I don't know. They sat in comfortable silence as the rain intensified, neither moving despite the droplets beginning to seep through the trees. There was something remarkably peaceful about it. Sitting with a complete stranger who asked simple questions and seemed genuinely interested in her responses. She couldn't recall the last time anyone had genuinely asked how she was feeling, or even seemed to care. I should probably go, Halafra finally said, though she made no move to leave. Would you like to grab coffee instead? Julian asked, his eyes twinkling with warmth. There's a place just across from the park. We're already getting wet. Might as well commit to it. She knew she should politely decline. She was, after all, a married woman, and despite the emptiness of that marriage, she had never considered doing anything that might compromise it. But the thought of returning to the desolate penthouse, of spending another evening alone in that exquisitely beautiful prison, was suddenly unbearable. Coffee sounds perfect, she heard herself say, the words escaping her lips before she could fully process them. The coffee shop was warm and inviting, filled with the comforting murmur of conversations and the rich, heady aroma of freshly brewed espresso. They found a small, secluded table tucked away in a cozy corner, and as Halafra wrapped her hands around a steaming mug of cappuccino, she felt something deep inside her begin to thaw, the ice slowly melting away. Julian was easy to talk to, asking questions about her life before New York, listening with genuine interest as she described growing up in Vermont, working in her family's bakery, the simple pleasures of a life that now seemed impossibly distant. She was careful not to mention Ryan by name, referring only vaguely to family circumstances that had brought her to the city. You miss it, Julian observed perceptively. Vermont, the bakery, that life, every single day, Halafra admitted, surprised by her own candor. Is it terrible to have all this and still desperately want something so much simpler? Not terrible at all. Money and success don't automatically equate to happiness. That's something I've learned the hard way. He stirred his coffee thoughtfully. I built my company from nothing, worked 100-hour weeks for years, sacrificed relationships and experiences, all in pursuit of the next breakthrough, the next big success. And you know what? The day we officially became a billion-dollar company, I went home to an empty apartment and realized I had absolutely no one to share it with. Success is meaningless if you have no one to celebrate it with. His words resonated deeply within her, striking a chord she hadn't realized was there. How did you find your way back? I'm still figuring it out, he admitted with a self-deprecating smile. But I've learned to value genuine connection over mere achievement, to prioritize people over relentless profits. My board probably thinks I'm crazy, but I sleep a lot better at night. They talked until the coffee shop staff began preparing to close, the hours slipping away like precious minutes. It was the first authentic conversation Halafra had experienced in months, and she found herself reluctant to let it end. I should probably let you go, Julian finally said, though his tone suggested he was equally hesitant. But I would genuinely love to do this again if you're open to it. It's rare to meet someone who truly understands that having everything can sometimes feel exactly like having absolutely nothing. Halafra hesitated, knowing she should politely refuse, knowing that this was potentially dangerous territory, but the crushing loneliness that awaited her back at the penthouse was suffocating. And Julian was offering something she desperately craved. Simple human connection, someone who saw her as a person rather than a mere obligation or an expensive accessory. I'd like that, she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. They exchanged phone numbers, and as Halafra walked back to the penthouse through the rain-washed streets, she felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Hope, not for anything inappropriate or wrong, but simply for the tantalizing possibility of friendship, of having at least one person in this vast, impersonal city who seemed to genuinely care whether she was happy or sad. The penthouse was dark and silent when she arrived, as it always was. Ryan's office light was off, and his bedroom door was firmly closed. She stood in the entryway, dripping rainwater onto the pristine marble, and felt the familiar emptiness settle back over her like a heavy, suffocating cloak. This was her life. Beautiful and hollow, full of everything except the one thing that truly mattered. In her room, Halafra changed into dry clothes and sat on the edge of her bed, Julian's number glowing brightly on her phone screen. She knew she was standing at a critical crossroads, that accepting his friendship might potentially complicate everything. But as she glanced around her stunning, yet utterly empty room, she realized she had already made her choice. She would rather embrace even a fleeting real connection than continue drowning in this vast ocean of isolation. She saved his number and set her phone aside, oblivious to the fact that this seemingly simple act of reaching out for human connection would inadvertently set in motion a series of events that would ultimately shatter the impenetrable ice surrounding her husband's carefully guarded heart. Over the following weeks, Halafra's burgeoning friendship with Julian became the single bright spot in her otherwise gray existence. They met for casual coffee, strolled through museums, and shared long, heartfelt conversations about everything from abstract philosophy to their most cherished childhood memories. Julian never pressed her for anything more than friendship, seeming to understand instinctively that she needed a genuine connection, not further complications. He made her laugh, listened attentively when she needed to confide, and slowly helped her to remember who she had been before she became the invisible Mrs. Costanos, lost in the shadows of her husband's vast wealth and success. Ryan, meanwhile, remained as distant as ever, a spectral presence who haunted the penthouse, but never truly inhabited it. Halafra stopped trying to reach him, stopped waiting for him to notice her, and stopped foolishly hoping that their unusual arrangement might somehow evolve into something real. She had Julian's friendship, her beloved books, and her revitalizing walks through the city. It wasn't the life she had once dreamed of, but it was, at the very least, survivable. Then, one evening in late November, Julian called with an invitation that would irrevocably change everything. There's a charity gala next Friday night, he said, his voice warm and inviting through the phone. It's for childhood literacy, actually a cause I care deeply about. I know these events are probably not your favorite thing, but I could really use a friendly face there. Would you consider coming as my guest? Halafra's initial instinct was to decline politely. Attending a high society event with Julian felt like crossing a significant line, transforming their innocent friendship into something more public, more official. But then she thought of another Friday night spent utterly alone in the cavernous penthouse, another evening of suffocating silence and crushing emptiness, and found herself agreeing before she could fully overthink the implications. "I'd love to," she said, surprising herself with how much she actually meant it. "Really? That's wonderful. I'll send a car for you at 7. After hanging up, Halafra sat with the full weight of what she had just impulsively agreed to. She knew she should inform Ryan. She knew it was the responsible thing to do, even in their hollow shell of a marriage. That evening, when she heard him return home unusually early, she gathered her courage and knocked tentatively on his office door. "Come in." His voice was clipped and distracted. Ryan sat behind his imposing desk, illuminated by the cold glow of multiple computer monitors. He didn't even glance up when she entered, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he intently studied whatever complex data currently consumed his undivided attention. Even now, slightly disheveled from a long, demanding day, with his tie loosened and his perfectly styled hair slightly mussed, he was devastatingly handsome. It made the sting of rejection somehow even worse, that he could look like that and still harbor absolutely no interest in her whatsoever. "I wanted to let you know that I'll be attending a charity gala on Friday," Halafra said, striving to keep her voice steady and even. "It's for childhood literacy. Julian Westbrook invited me." That simple statement finally captured his attention. Ryan's fingers froze on the keyboard, and his icy eyes slowly lifted to meet her gaze for the first time in weeks. They were cold, assessing, revealing nothing of his inner thoughts. "Julian Westbrook," he repeated, his tone flat and devoid of emotion. "My competitor." "A friend," Halafra corrected, lifting her chin slightly in defiance. "I met him in the park a few weeks ago. He's been kind to me." Something flickered briefly in Ryan's eyes, there and gone so quickly that she might have imagined it. "Do what you want. You don't need my permission to attend charity events." The dismissal was clear and absolute. Halafra felt the familiar ache of rejection, but stubbornly pushed it down. "Fine, I just wanted you to know." She turned to leave, but his voice abruptly stopped her at the door. "Halafra." She looked back, hope fluttering foolishly in her chest, refusing to be extinguished. "Wear something appropriate. You represent my name at these things." The fragile hope died, its wings clipped. Of course. His only concern was appearances, reputation, the perceived optics of his invisible wife appearing in public. "Of course," she said quietly, and quickly exited the room before he could see the tears threatening to spill. Friday arrived with Halafra feeling a complex mixture of nervous anticipation and defiant excitement. If Ryan only truly cared about mere appearances, then she would most certainly give him appearances. She spent the entire afternoon at an exclusive salon, allowing the skilled stylists to work their transformative magic on her hair and makeup. Then, she carefully slipped into the dress she had purchased specifically for this particular evening. A stunning gown that had cost far more than seemed reasonable, but made her feel beautiful for the first time in what felt like forever. The dress was crafted from a deep emerald silk that perfectly accentuated the subtle green flecks in her hazel eyes. It elegantly hugged her curves before flowing into a graceful skirt, with a neckline that was undeniably elegant rather than overtly provocative, but revealed enough to remind the world that she was, indeed, a woman, not simply a name vaguely mentioned in the society pages. Her dark hair was swept up into a sophisticated style, with a few strategically placed curls left loose to soften the overall look. Diamond earrings, a lavish gift from Ryan that she had never previously worn, completed the ensemble. When she cautiously looked at herself in the mirror, Halafra barely recognized the confident woman staring back. She looked radiant, beautiful, and vibrantly alive in a way she hadn't felt since her disastrous wedding day. For tonight, she would refuse to be the invisible wife. For tonight, she would simply be Halafra, a woman attending an event with a friend who genuinely appreciated her company. Julian's reaction when he greeted her in the lobby instantly confirmed her stunning transformation. His eyes widened appreciatively, and a slow, genuine smile spread across his face. "Halafra, you look absolutely stunning." "Thank you," she said, and meant it wholeheartedly. "You look pretty wonderful yourself." He did, impeccably dressed in a perfectly tailored tuxedo that made him look every inch the successful and sophisticated businessman he was. He offered her his arm, and she took it without hesitation, feeling a thrill of subtle rebellion as they walked towards the waiting car. Ryan obviously didn't want her. He had made that abundantly clear. Why shouldn't she, for once, wholeheartedly enjoy the company of someone who actually did? The gala was being held at the prestigious Plaza Hotel, the grand ballroom transformed into an elegant wonderland of sparkling crystal chandeliers and flickering candlelight. Halafra felt countless pairs of eyes turning to scrutinize them as they entered, and heard the hushed whispers that inevitably followed in their wake. Julian Westbrook and Ryan Costanos were fierce rivals in the business world, their ongoing competition the subject of countless articles and rampant speculation. For Julian to arrive with Ryan's mysterious wife would certainly not go unnoticed. "Are you all right?" Julian asked quietly, sensing her growing tension. "Yes," she said, squaring her shoulders. "Let them look." Julian introduced her to various people throughout the evening. Tech entrepreneurs, philanthropists, artists, all of whom treated her like an actual person rather than a decorative accessory. She found herself laughing at witty jokes, engaging in stimulating conversations, remembering what it felt like to be seen and valued for herself. Julian stayed close, but not possessively so, thoughtfully including her in discussions and ensuring that she never felt out of place. They were standing at the bar getting glasses of champagne when Halafra felt the entire atmosphere in the room subtly shift. Conversations quieted perceptibly, and the collective attention of the entire room redirected toward the entrance. She turned with everyone else and felt her heart stop. Ryan stood in the doorway, surveying the ballroom with those familiar, cold gray eyes. He wore a flawlessly tailored tuxedo that looked as though it had been designed specifically for his lean frame, every single line perfect, every detail impeccable. But it wasn't his undeniably impressive appearance that made her breath catch in her throat. It was the way his eyes methodically swept across the room and locked onto her with an intensity that seemed to physically pin her in place. He had never looked at her like that before. Never really looked at her at all. Really, but now, his intense gaze raked over her from head to toe, taking in every detail of her carefully chosen appearance. The dress, the elaborate hairstyle, the confident way she stood beside Julian. And what she saw reflected in his eyes wasn't the cold indifference she had grown so accustomed to. It was undisguised fury. Ryan crossed the ballroom with a predatory grace, the crowd parting before him almost instinctively. Julian tensed beside her, straightening to his full height as Ryan approached. "Westbrook," Ryan said, his voice dangerously soft. "Costanos," Julian replied evenly. "I didn't expect to see you here. I thought you actively avoided these events." "My plans changed." Ryan's eyes never left Halafra's face. "When I heard my wife would be attending," the possessive emphasis on the word wife sent an unexpected shiver down Halafra's spine. This wasn't the distant, uninterested man she had passively married. This was someone entirely different, someone dangerous and utterly unpredictable. "Your wife is here as my guest," Julian said calmly, though his hand subtly moved to rest on the small of Halafra's back in a protective gesture. The effect was instantaneous. Ryan's jaw visibly clenched, a muscle ticking in his cheek as his eyes dropped to where Julian's hand rested on Halafra's back. When he looked up again, the raw fury in his gaze had transformed into something darker, something possessive and almost primal. "Take your hand off her," Ryan said quietly, but there was an undeniable threat beneath the carefully controlled words. "Now, Ryan," Halafra said, finding her voice despite the shock of his unexpected appearance, his undivided attention, and his completely inexplicable anger. "What are you doing here?" "What am I doing here?" He laughed, but there was absolutely no humor in it. "What are you doing here, Halafra? Dressed like that with him?" The sheer unfairness of the question sparked her own anger. "I told you I was coming. You explicitly said you didn't care. I didn't realize you were coming as his date. I came as his friend. Not that it's any of your business. You've made it abundantly clear that you have absolutely no interest in what I do or who I spend my time with." The crowd was openly watching now, all conversations halting as the unfolding drama captivated the entire ballroom. The intense rivalry between Ryan Costanos and Julian Westbrook was already a well-known business legend, but no one had anticipated a personal confrontation, especially not over a woman. "No interest." Ryan stepped closer, and Halafra could smell his expensive cologne, could see the storm raging within his usually impassive eyes. "You think I have no interest in my own wife? You've never shown any before," she shot back, her own carefully restrained emotions finally breaking free after months of pent-up frustration. 6 months, Ryan. 6 months of living in the same apartment, and you've barely spoken 10 words to me. You don't eat with me, don't talk to me, don't even look at me. And now you suddenly show up here acting like a possessive, jealous husband? You don't get to do that. You don't get to ignore me for months and then suddenly care simply because someone else does." The ballroom had become completely silent, every eye fixed on them. This was far better than any entertainment the gala organizers could have possibly planned. The cold, detached tech billionaire and his mysterious wife were having a very public and very dramatic argument. Ryan's hands clenched into tight fists at his sides. "We're leaving now." "No." The single word hung in the charged air between them, a defiant challenge. Halafra had never defied him before, had never had any real reason to. But she wasn't going to let him control her now. Not when he had effectively forfeited any right to care about her choices. "Halafra," he said, and his voice dropped to a dangerously low whisper. "Don't test me on this." "Or what?" she challenged him. "You'll ignore me even more thoroughly? Go weeks without coming home instead of mere days?" "I'm not leaving, Ryan. I'm here with Julian, and I'm staying." Something finally snapped in Ryan's carefully controlled expression. Before Halafra could fully process what was happening, he moved with lightning speed. His hand wrapped firmly around her wrist, not painfully, but with undeniable strength, and he roughly pulled her against his hard chest. "You're mine," he growled, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "My wife mine, and I'm done pretending otherwise." Then, in front of 500 shocked guests, Ryan Costanos kissed his wife for the very first time since their sterile courthouse wedding 6 long months ago. The kiss was neither gentle nor tentative. It was a raw explosion of possession and desperation, fueled by 6 months of suppressed emotion, all colliding in one devastating moment. Ryan's free hand came up to cup the back of Halafra's head, angling her face as he claimed her mouth with a thoroughness that left absolutely no doubt about his intentions. She should have pushed him away, should have been furious at his caveman-like display of dominance, but her own treacherous body betrayed her. Her hands instinctively fisted in his expensive jacket, and she found herself kissing him back with equal fervor, pouring months of pent-up loneliness and longing into the unexpected connection. When he finally broke the kiss, they were both breathing hard, their faces flushed. The ballroom had erupted in shocked whispers and murmurs. Julian stood frozen, his expression unreadable, and Ryan looked at Halafra as if he was seeing her for the very first time. Really seeing her. "We're leaving," he said again, but this time it wasn't a command. It was a plea. Halafra turned to Julian, whose face had settled into an expression of quiet resignation. "Go," he said softly. "This is clearly something you two need to work out. But Halafra, if he hurts you again, if he goes back to ignoring you, call me. Promise me." She nodded, grateful for his understanding. Even his guilt twisted sharply in her stomach. Julian had been nothing but kind to her, and she had just publicly kissed another man right in front of him. "Thank you for everything, for seeing me when no one else did. Always," Julian responded, a bittersweet smile gracing his lips before he turned and walked away, leaving Halafra standing alone with her husband. Ryan's gaze was intense, unwavering, as if he feared she might vanish into thin air if he so much as blinked. He kept her hand firmly clasped in his as he guided her through the opulent ballroom, their every step accompanied by a chorus of whispers and curious stares. Ryan ignored them all, focused solely on her. His driver awaited them outside, holding the car door open. They slipped into the back seat, a heavy silence settling between them. The moment the door clicked shut, Ryan pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her with a desperate possessiveness, as if he were afraid she would bolt. 6 months? He finally breathed against her hair, his voice thick with raw emotion. 6 months I have watched you from afar, torturing myself, trying to convince myself I was doing the right thing by staying away. Halafra pulled back slightly, her eyes searching his face, confusion swirling within her. "What are you talking about?" You barely acknowledged I existed. His grip tightened, his voice gaining an edge of fierce intensity. I acknowledged every breath you took. Every morning, before you woke, I stood outside your door, listening to you sleep, just to assure myself you were safe. Every night when I came home late from the office, I would check on you, making sure you were comfortable, happy, or as happy as you could be under the circumstances. I knew what books you were reading, what flowers you bought to brighten up this sterile penthouse, what you cooked, even though you always ate alone. Her mind reeled, the weight of his words crushing her. But why? Why watch me, stalk me almost, and never talk to me? Why care from a distance yet act like you felt nothing at all? Ryan closed his eyes, a tremor running through him. For the first time since she had met him, she saw a flicker of vulnerability in his guarded expression, a chink in the armor he so carefully maintained. Because I was terrified, Halifer. Utterly and completely terrified. I married you for practical reasons, to fulfill your father's request, and, if I'm honest, to silence the incessant pressure from the board to settle down and project a more stable image. I told myself I could keep it businesslike, professional. But the moment I saw you at the courthouse, standing there so radiant, so unexpectedly beautiful, something inside me shifted. You were so genuine, so unlike anyone I had ever met, and I knew that if I allowed myself to get close to you, I would fall completely irrevocably. And I simply couldn't afford that. Why not? She whispered, the question barely audible. Because everyone I love leaves me, he said, the words stark and simple, yet laden with a lifetime of pain. My mother died when I was 12. My father remarried within a year and promptly forgot I existed. My college girlfriend, the woman I thought I would spend my life with, left me for someone with more time and less ambition. Every person I have ever truly cared about has either died or abandoned me. So, I built walls, threw myself into my work, and convinced myself that I didn't need anyone. And then you walked into my life, and those carefully constructed walls started cracking from day one. Tears streamed silently down Halifer's face, her heart aching for the man before her, for the years of pain he had carried alone. So, you pushed me away first before I could leave you. Yes, he admitted, the word heavy with regret. And I told myself it was better this way, that you could live in comfort, without the burden of my emotional baggage, that we could coexist peacefully, albeit separately, in our gilded cage. But tonight, when I heard you were going to that gala with Westbrook, something inside me snapped. The thought of him touching you, making you smile, being the one you turned to for companionship, it drove me insane with jealousy. I realized I would rather risk you leaving me than continue living this hollow, half-life without really having you. The car finally pulled up to their building, the imposing skyscraper looming above them, but neither of them moved. They remained in the darkness of the back seat, years of pain and misunderstanding hanging heavy in the air between them. I am not going to leave you, Ryan, Halifer said softly, her voice trembling slightly but firm. I made a commitment when I married you, and I take that commitment seriously. But I cannot live like this anymore. I cannot continue to be invisible in my own marriage, a ghost in my own home. If you want me to stay, if you truly want this marriage to be real, you have to let me in. All the way in. I know, he said, his hands gently framing her face, a tenderness in his touch that made her heart ache. I know, and God, I am terrified, but I am more terrified of losing you. Tonight, when I saw you with him, saw you laughing and alive in a way you never are around me, I realized what a fool I have been. You deserve so much better than what I have given you. I don't want better, Ryan, Halifer countered, her voice laced with desperation. I want you, the real you, not the distant stranger who has been living in my apartment. I want the man who stands outside my door listening to me sleep, who notices what books I read and what flowers I buy. That is the husband I want. Ryan's thumb traced her lower lip, his eyes following the movement with an intensity that sent shivers down her spine. I can be that man, Halifer. I want to be that man, but I have to know. Do you have feelings for Westbrook? Julian is my friend, she said honestly, her gaze unwavering. He was kind to me when I was drowning in loneliness. But Ryan, my heart has always been yours. From the moment I said, I do, in that sterile courthouse. I was just waiting, hoping, for you to finally want it. I want it, he said fiercely, his voice raw with longing. God, I want everything. Your heart, your time, your laughter, your frustration when I work too late, your happiness when I come home early. I want mornings together and evenings together, and every moment in between. I want a real marriage, Halifra, with you. She smiled through her tears, a glimmer of hope finally flickering within her. Then take me upstairs and start showing me. The penthouse felt different when they entered together, the air lighter, as if the space itself sensed the profound shift in their relationship. Ryan kept his hand entwined with hers as they walked through the expansive living room, neither of them willing to break the fragile connection after so many months of isolation. I should warn you, he said, his voice laced with trepidation as they reached the hallway that led to their separate bedrooms. I am not good at this, at sharing feelings, at being vulnerable. I am going to mess up, probably often. Then I will call you out on it, Ryan, Halifer said, her voice firm but gentle. And you will apologize and do better. That is how relationships work. They take effort and communication, and the willingness to be imperfect together. He pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers, his eyes searching hers with a desperate plea. I don't deserve you, Halifer. Probably not, she agreed, a small smile playing on her lips. But you have me anyway. This kiss was different from the one at the gala. It was slower, deeper, more tentative, full of promise rather than mere possession. Ryan's hands moved to her waist, pulling her flush against him, and Halifer felt 6 months of pent-up longing ignite into something fierce and consuming. Your room or mine? He murmured against her lips, his breath warm against her skin. Ours, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Starting tonight, we share everything. No more separate lives. No more walls. Ryan swept her into his arms, carrying her effortlessly toward his bedroom, the largest in the penthouse, a room that she had never dared to enter before. He set her down gently beside the massive bed, his hands trembling slightly as he reached for the zipper of her dress. I have dreamed about this, Halifer, he confessed, his voice barely a whisper. About undressing you, touching you, hearing you say my name without the formality you always use. Ryan? She said, just his name, but filled with such warmth and longing that he closed his eyes as if it were a benediction. The dress pooled at her feet, and for the first time, Halifax stood before her husband without barriers, physical or emotional. He looked at her as if she were something precious and miraculous, his hands gentle as he traced the curves of her body. You are so beautiful, Halifax, he whispered, his voice filled with awe, inside and out. How did I ever think I could keep my distance from you? She reached for the buttons of his shirt, her fingers clumsy with anticipation. No more distance, Ryan. No more walls. Just us. Finally, just us. They came together with 6 months of denied passion, learning each other's bodies and hearts simultaneously. Ryan was tender and fierce by turns, whispering promises against her skin, showing her through touch what words could not adequately express. And Halifax gave herself completely, holding nothing back, trusting him with the heart she had protected for so long. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the darkness, her head resting on his chest, his fingers tracing idle patterns on her shoulder. The city lights filtered through the panoramic windows, casting soft shadows across the bed. But for the first time since moving to New York, Halifax felt truly at home. Tell me everything, Ryan said quietly, his voice laced with regret. Everything I missed these past 6 months. Everything I should have asked about but didn't. So she did. She told him about her lonely days, her solitary walks through Central Park, her desperate attempts to make the sterile penthouse feel like a home. She told him about meeting Julian, about their unlikely friendship, about how his kindness had kept her from completely losing herself in the isolation. Ryan listened without interruption, his arms tightening around her when she described the depth of her loneliness. I am so sorry, Halifax, he said when she finished, his voice thick with emotion. I was so focused on protecting myself that I never considered I was destroying you in the process. Can you forgive me? I already have, Ryan, Halifax said softly. But this has to be different going forward. I need you to talk to me, to tell me when you are scared or overwhelmed. We are partners now, really partners. That means sharing the burden, not carrying it alone. I don't know how to do that, Halifax, he admitted, his voice laced with vulnerability. I have been alone for so long. Then we will learn together, she said simply, her voice filled with unwavering determination. One day at a time, one conversation at a time. We will make mistakes, both of us, but we will face them together. Ryan pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Starting tomorrow, things change. I am going to cut back my hours, come home for dinner, actually be present in our life together. The company will survive with me working less, and if it doesn't, then it wasn't worth sacrificing you for anyway. I would like that, Ryan, Halifax said, her heart soaring with newfound hope. And I want to go back to baking, maybe start a small bakery here in the city. Something that is mine, but that I can share with you. I will help you, Halifax, he promised, his voice firm. Whatever you need, whatever you want to build, I am here to support you. You saved your family's business. Now, let me help you build your own dream. They talked through the night, sharing stories and dreams, learning each other in ways that went far beyond physical intimacy. As dawn began to break over Manhattan, painting the sky in breathtaking shades of pink and gold, Halifax realized that she had finally found what she had been searching for. Not the fairy tale she had imagined, but something better, something more real. A partnership built on honesty and hard-won trust. A love that had survived neglect to bloom even stronger. I love you, Halifax, Ryan said, his voice filled with reverence as the first rays of sunlight touched her face. I should have said it months ago, should have shown you every day, but I am saying it now, and I will say it every day for the rest of our lives. I love you, Halifax. She smiled, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. I love you too, Ryan, and I am going to hold you to that promise every single day. He kissed her again, slow and sweet, a promise of all the mornings to come. And as they lay together watching the sun rise over their city, both of them knew that this was not the end of their story. It was finally, truly, the beginning. In the weeks and months that followed, they began to actively cultivate a real marriage. Ryan made a conscious effort to come home earlier, to share his struggles and his fears, to let Halifax into the parts of himself he had always kept hidden, carefully guarded behind impenetrable walls. She, in turn, opened her bakery in Brooklyn, a cozy little space filled with the comforting aroma of cinnamon and freshly baked bread. Ryan could often be found there on weekends, happily helping behind the counter, his expensive suits dusted with flour, a genuine smile gracing his once perpetually stern face. Julian remained a steadfast friend to both of them, his initial rivalry with Ryan softening into a mutual respect born of their shared affection for Halifax. The society pages, once filled with speculation about the mysterious Mrs. Costanos, began to feature pictures of a couple clearly and deeply in love, caught stealing kisses at charity events or walking hand in hand through the sprawling beauty of Central Park. And within the walls of the penthouse, which had once felt like a beautiful prison, a genuine sense of warmth and belonging finally took root. The kitchen was always filled with tantalizing aromas, a symphony of spices and sweet pastries. The rooms echoed with laughter and heartfelt conversation. The bed they now shared was marked by the kind of intimacy that can only come from two people who choose each other, not just once, but every single day. It had not been a traditional love story, filled with instant connection and grand romantic gestures. Instead, it had been forged in the crucible of loneliness and fear, and in the slow, sometimes painful process of two damaged people learning to trust again, slowly dismantling the walls they had so carefully constructed around their hearts. But in the end, their love was real and lasting, and worth every moment of pain it had taken to build. Because sometimes, love is not about the perfect beginning. It is about having the courage to begin again, together, and build something beautiful and enduring from the ashes of what could have been. And for Ryan and Halifax Costanos, that second beginning was the greatest gift either of them had ever received.